Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Erik, that is Zahraa, a former LSAT Demon student and current 1L at the University of Toledo Law. Zahraa, it is wonderful to have you on. Thanks so much for joining. How are you doing?
Of course. Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing great. Always happy to hear from former students who are crushing it in law school. And you sent in a very nice email just updating us on how you were doing and sharing that after your LSAT journey through dedication and hard work that was all on you, you were able to secure a full ride plus stipend to law school. Is that right? So not only are you not paying for law school, the law school's paying for you to go.
As Nathan says, they rolled out the red carpet. It's the full ride, stipend, honor status with like exclusive networking events. All they could do, basically.
Amazing. Well, I want to hear about that. Why don't we backtrack a little bit and start at the beginning? Tell me about early days of how you got started with the LSAT, where you were, and just the beginning of your journey and what that was like.
Yeah, so I started around like beginning of 2022. So I started doing my sort of like preliminary research about the LSAT and how I was going to get into it. You know, like how Nathan is always like, just start with one question, but we all don't start that way. So I came across the podcast, but I started with the trainer book, which was good in its own ways, but it's not the best, and you want the best for everything. And then I moved to Seven Sage, and that I would say killed at least 6 months of my time.
Hmm.
And I would say, while it may work for some people, the main issue that I and other Demon students have found is that it's so convoluted and, gimmicky and overwhelming because you're going through that whole core curriculum that looks like you have 1,000 things on your to-do list. And that is incredibly overwhelming. So yeah, I really actually started even like with those materials in early 2022. And then in between like a lot of traveling and projects in my personal life, studying on and off until I took it for the first time in April 2023. And then I took it again in June 2023. And I had Nathan's voice in the back of my head, like maybe, don't stop. But for me, for my goals and for my timeline, it was perfect. And I decided I wanted to start in the fall, and I was going for free. And I didn't want to move out of state again after moving for undergrad. And I was like, honestly, do I care about like Harvard or something? No, I don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like your ceiling though for anyone is as high as you place it. And like you guys all say, it's a learnable test. 100% it is. You just have to actually be willing to apply yourself. And so you decide, is you Toledo or people say lower tier schools. I personally think if something is aligned with you, it's not low tier. It's about what you're compatible with and what works for you. And I have to say, I love it so much and it's perfect for me and I listen to my heart.
Amazing.
So you decide.
Yes. I love that. I love that you knew that you did not need to go to Harvard to do the kind of work that you're interested in. And that I'm sure, and this is true for anybody listening who's maybe thinking about the local law school in your city or nearby in your state, look up a history of the Supreme Court justices of your state, or look up, which by the way, I did for Ohio, and hello, University of Toledo, got some representation there. Look up local law firms and their list of attorneys and see where they went. And not everyone's going to be from Harvard and Yale, and probably very few of them. It's going to be from those local schools, which, like they did for you, are going to be willing to whirl out the red carpet if you get the right LSAT score.
Right. And I'm from Michigan, but it's only an hour drive. And I have to say, everyone hates on Cooley. And maybe it's fair to some extent because like you don't want to go there and be like, can I even take the bar at the end, like when I'm done? But I know many incredibly successful lawyers from Cooley because at the end of the day, as always with the bar, with anything you do in anything in life, it's about the effort you personally put in. Because No one is going to be like Plankton and SpongeBob's head, remember, kind of maneuvering and trying to find the secret formula. Like, you need to look at yourself and realize you're the one sitting down there on test day for the LSAT, for the bar, while you're studying, when you're taking law school exams, and you're applying that work. So
Yeah,
that's just something in yourself, no matter where you decide to go. Sometimes people are too like caught up on the names.
absolutely. All right, going back a little bit, you mentioned you started with some other prep companies, got lost in the curriculum and the planning of studying instead of just studying. So that was back in 2022. Do you remember about where you were like score wise when you started? Do you have a memory of a diagnostic score?
My raw score first time without anything, 134.
Okay,
Like, what is this? Like logic games? No. You know, because like how can you, when you're coming into it, for the majority of people, know how to, like the demon taught me how to most efficiently set up the games. And let me tell you, that's what bumped up my score, for sure. And now it's like it's so fun. Everyone says it, right? It was like their worst because it's mechanical and you need to learn the mechanics. But it's learnable. It's not rocket science. And once you
for
do,
sure.
yeah, and then reading comp, I started out like pretty good. And I would say like in like the 80s, like when I even first started with the demon, that's
Hmm.
always been a strong suit for me though, which dipped and then went back to.
Sure.
Um, LR as well. There's some mechanics to it too. Not necessarily gimmicks at all, but in terms of the way of thinking. And so then you get to the demon and they're like, just start. Like just start. Everyone's coming from these other programs like, okay, well, what schedule do I put in? Where do I map? And the demons like interface, I know I sound like an ad, but just like the website is like it's so aesthetically pleasing and easy to use, and you just like dig into the questions and you start and you see where your weaknesses are, and then you see why, and then if you apply yourself you can improve them. And that's what I did, and I got to 160. But I will say with a caveat, my second performance of the LSAT, I think I nailed LR. NRC would come second, but I bombed LG on that. And had I done like really, really bombed it, my performance just was not there that second time. But had I done as well on LG as I did the first time around, my score would have been in the mid 160s minimum because I didn't even complete the second game. Like it, but had
Wow.
I, yeah. But in any case, maybe that worked out for the best because perhaps it would have persuaded me to wait unnecessarily.
Hmm. Well, you got your went from a 134 to a 160 over sounds like a little bit more than a year of studying.
Inconsistently studying, yeah.
Inconsistently. Okay, but you got to 160, which was enough for a full ride, which is the dream. Amazing. Going back to your study a little bit, you mentioned there was some inconsistency, but when you were studying, particularly with the demon, what did that look like? I love the idea that studying at any point is just sitting down and just doing one LSAT question and then another one. On a more macro level, what did it look like? Were you mixing in timed sections? Were you doing live classes as well? Like, what did a typical week of study look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm someone who I can use the extra accountability, and so I loved live classes, and it helped to just get the feedback live, like if I'm in Ben or Nathan or whoever's class, but especially them because they don't let you move on until you get the click, and that's incredibly valuable. And going from feeling like, I specifically have moments that I remember in class, going from feeling like, what in the world is this LR question talking about, and how did it get to the right answer there? To the explanation given by them and then being like, oh, like you get the blindfold taken off your eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
so I definitely did live and loved it. There was no other way for me personally, but I do think you can get a lot out of also a lot of my studying was done like alone. Most of it was alone, besides the live classes. So in a week, I focused exclusively on studying. I wasn't working, and I would say probably with the demon for what I don't know what my account says, maybe like 4 to 6-ish months. I have probably like a few live the demon proctor tests in there which were so helpful. because I was not good at taking a whole time test like on my own. So those
Hmm.
proctor tests were awesome. I would do those whenever you guys had them. Um, and then I did a couple on my own. And I would just go through drilling and like try to get my scores up for all of the sections. And it looked like I would say at least like 5 hours of studying a day, although you don't necessarily need that. I just like I loved it and I felt like I wasn't working, so why not just like keep brushing up.
Hmm.
Um, I would usually like I'm Nathan always talks about like what's your best hour of the day. For me, when I wake up, it's just like self-explanatory. My battery is high, like on your phone, but as you
Yeah.
go through the day, it gets used. So I
Hmm.
would wake up and I would go into LR and I would have such a fresh mind and I would just do it on my own. I would just throw in questions like at night, in the morning, get on some live classes.
Hmm.
Uh, Basically, though, when it comes down to it, and as you guys all say, just figure out what your mistake is one question at a time. And really, those little steps that build, eventually they get you to a really high palace. You just,
Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds excellent. 5 hours a day, definitely on the high end, but you were probably you it wasn't all in a chunk. You were doing bits and pieces throughout the day. Some of it was maybe attending a class, which could be sort of a lower lift for you. So yeah, awesome. You mentioned that the games were an early struggle for you, which I think they are for pretty much everybody. Um, was that the biggest hurdle for you to overcome, or like what were, if you had to say one biggest challenge in your LSAT journey, what would it be?
I would say actually, I don't think games are necessarily a hurdle in terms of how we understand the word or a challenge. It's simply about learning the mechanics. And the mechanics are not difficult to learn. The biggest challenge in the sense of how we understand the word for me was LR, because you're
Hmm.
actually changing your sort of way of thinking. But maybe you're not actually changing the way you're thinking. What happens in the classes and as you actually properly learn LR properly, there's like this other part of you that gets pulled out mentally where you're like, oh, I can think like this. Oh, this is logical thinking. I'm not bringing in these other, but what if this? And sometimes I'll still hear these things in classes. They'll be like, well, what if this or this is no, what does it say? Is
Hmm.
1 + 1 + 1 3? And that's all we're asking. And it's fun, like it's this mental exercise and it's wonderful. And that was the hurdle. And I say hurdle because it feels so good to overcome a hurdle,
Yes.
you know?
Amazing. Did you, now that you're in law school, do you feel like your LSAT prep helped to prepare you for law school?
Yes. And I do want to say with a caveat though, I have so many brilliant classmates who I'm not sure how they may have done, but they do so well just because of how they apply themselves. So, if you're already there, you're just listening to this or whatever, like don't let that like put you off. But when Nate used to always say this is truly the best predictor of how you're going to do in law school, I'd be like, what? How? Like you kind of don't register it until you're there. And then you're like, your teacher or your professor is talking about if this, then this, but not necessarily this. And you're like, I know this.
Sounds
Or
familiar.
yeah, or you're mapping something out on the board. Like in Civ Pro, we had this one lesson and it was cake to me, which was just like she kind of diagrammed everything of like, okay, well, can the plaintiff do this to this plaintiff or the like, and I was like, you guys, it's just logic. Like, look where the arrow is going. You can't go back the other way.
This is a web diagram. I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Amazing. What's the best thing about law school?
The best thing about law school for me is getting to do what I knew I always wanted to do and not having to do math or science. And just like you're reading and exercising my brain in the same way that I have been with the LSAT. And truly, like Nate says again, like you're not out here doing like farm labor for 12 hours in the sun. Like you decided to do this, do it. Did you know what you were signing up for? Because it's reading and writing. It could get annoying, sure. But like when you just do it, it feels so good.
And you mentioned some impressive classmates that really apply themselves. Are you finding a nice community there? Does it Does it help to have a bunch of really smart people around?
Yeah, and it's I mean Toledo is interesting because you might not like when people kind of imagine law school, maybe they imagine like the movies and stuff. It's not really like that. It's so warm. It's warm and welcoming, and there is this sense of community. It's very like Midwestern.
People
It's
aren't ripping pages out of textbooks in the library.
exactly, exactly.
Good.
It's not, of course, like not ev like people are more helpful than you might think, but of course they're all still gonna have one door closed because of like the edge.
Competition?
They care about that, yeah. Which is fair. But overall, it doesn't. I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't certainly here at U Toledo does not feel as stressful as I can imagine it would feel in more cutthroat environments in
Sure.
other schools.
Gotcha. Have you got a study group, or is it all you studying solo?
I like to study solo. I have a couple of friends, but I find like who I could study with, and sometimes it's fun, like we bounce ideas off of each other, but I find I'm just more productive, like the more solo I am, because ultimately it's going to put me in the same environment that I'll be in on test day, like working through problems in my own head in silence and like looking
Hmm.
at the paper and figuring it out.
Sure.
So yeah, but a lot of people do. They do have like study groups and people that they kind of like got together with like from the beginning of the semester and that works for them. So there's definitely that. It's you'll find what you're looking for, I think, wherever you go.
Is there anything that has surprised you about law school, stuff that you did not expect?
I think don't downplay that you might need to do some adjustment, but at the same time, it's not as major as you might think. I would say the most important thing is to find a system that works well for you and your personal learning style and what is most efficient for that.
A
And once
system for studying and
yeah,
for approaching classes?
yes. And once you do that, it's like cake. Um, if you don't, and I didn't really have the chance, to be honest, to like find that. Now I am at the end of the semester that I can apply for the next semester, but it makes it a little bit more challenging. But I mean, I think what you could keep in mind to help you is that when you have to like you have to really grind every day, is that like the time is going to pass anyway. Just do what you have to do to make it easier for yourself, for your next class and then come finals. So you really do have to like come in with your notes, however is the best way for you to take them, and then kind of review those before class. Then you get to class and you go over them. After class, you kind of begin your outline of them. And I would really recommend that way because it was confusing going in and be like, what's the best approach? Like, what do I do to prepare for classes and going into finals? And when do I outline? And when I say outline after class, I mean picking out the most important stuff that the professor was talking about from your notes that you've added on to and
Hmm.
then take those. And then when you get to like the end of the semester and you're really outlining, it would be so much easier. Um, yeah, that was the surprising part because I didn't know what to
Okay.
do.
Yeah. Having to learn on the fly how to do law school. Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's really important to know, I would say, going in.
Well, I'm sure that now that this is going to live on the internet, some future law
Right.
students will have
Like
your
I wish I
wisdom to
heard
learn from.
that.
Yeah. So no, thanks
Yeah.
for sharing that. All good ideas. Well, thank you, Zahraa. It's really been a pleasure catching up. Thanks so much for writing in and sharing your story. Always fantastic to hear where students have ended up and to hear that you're loving law school and that you won the game. The whole point of what I do, what we do at the Demon is to allow people like you to land in exactly this situation. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't think that I thought like me and my family were preparing to like just pay for law school. I didn't even think it was possible to go for free, really. But if you can, like no matter what, why not? Ultimately, pass the bar, no one cares where you went. In the courtroom, no one asks, no one cares.
Hmm.
Do what's best and smartest for you. And if you're thinking about the Demon, obviously I recommend it. They're wonderful, wonderful. Like, I wish you guys had a 1L program, like for 1L courses.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, I would
That could,
certainly not be qualified to teach it, but we can
yeah,
definitely
maybe
float
Nate
that
or
to Ben and
Ben.
Nathan. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, maybe they already
Cool.
thought of it, but thank you.
Awesome. Any final words of advice for current LSAT students or even people just thinking about starting out their LSAT studies?
Yeah, I'd say the first question to ask yourself if you're thinking about law school, thinking about studying for the LSAT, do you like to read? Are you willing to sit for periods of time to read and take notes? And can you, if not, can you force yourself to if you have a bigger reason why you want to go that outweighs that? Um, and are you willing to work hard? And if yes, you can do it no matter what you think, even if you're coming from a math or science background. Sometimes they try to like polar these things just too much. They're not that much opposite, actually. You have to take these elements, sort of like an equation, which are the rules of the law, and then
Mm-hmm.
you apply them. So you may find that it works well for you. And just if you decide to apply yourself, actually apply yourself and go with the best. And don't settle and just know what's right for you. When you get it, you'll feel it. And what I mean by that is the offers and when you reach like the point where you're satisfied. And I think a JD can pay off so well in the long run if you're thinking about it and you're able to. To be honest, I think just do it.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Zahraa. Again, a real pleasure chatting with you.
You as well. Thank you.
All right. Email daily at lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.